Welcome to Decluttering 55 Plus with Michelle Passoff. This is the place to come for news you can use to get things done. Everybody knows that too much stuff is clutter, and cleaning it makes you neater and tidier. To us, it is a life management tool that helps you navigate your next steps. This is what my book, Lighten Up, Free Yourself from Clutter, is all about. As baby boomers, we have a lot in front of us that is confounding and confronting, so we sweep things under the carpet and put them off another day or forever. That is clutter because it keeps us stuck, and my new book addresses all of that. So we're going to bring experts, authors, and authorities here to talk with us about health, relationships, technology, finance, housing. What are you going to do next in life? Passing down your life stories, and even the challenges of making final arrangements. Here we aim to learn, open new possibilities, choose, take action, and create a legacy, not a mess. So let's get started. Today we're going to talk about what to do with stuff, but not just any stuff that may have value. So in order to learn more and avoid costly mistakes, we have called in George Higby to pick his brain. You might know George from his YouTube channel show called the Antique Nomad. George is a certified Appraisers Guilds of America appraiser, and he now combs the country doing estate sales, appraising private collections, buying antiques and vintage items, all the while filming for his YouTube channel. Here he is today to enlighten us about how we can recognize valuables in our home and what to do when we want to sell them. Welcome, George. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Now, let's start at the very beginning. Can you explain what an appraiser is?
Yes, an appraiser is someone who comes in and looks at your antiques, personal property, also just common things that you have depending on the need. Like if you're having an insurance appraisal, it might be the television set or the stereo equipment or your computer stuff. And we come in and help assign a value to those things. And the value really depends on what the purpose of the appraisal is. If you're insuring your stuff, that's one level of value. If you're having a fire sale because you're facing bankruptcy and you've got to sell it all in a week, that's a different value. And so we look at the situation and help people figure out what they have and what it's worth.
Have you always been an appraiser?
No, I became an appraiser after I was a guest on Antiques Roadshow. I was a backstage guest, and I helped a friend of mine get an item chosen to go on there, and they sent me backstage, and I got to see everything that was happening and talk to the appraisers, and they suggested that I go to appraisal school and learn how to become a certified appraiser. You have to learn a lot of ethics and standards and practices. It's not just knowing what the merchandise is. So I took their advice, and I've been an appraiser since 1999.
What were you showing there on the Antique Roadshow?
My friend had a set of little figures by Minton, the very famous English porcelain company, called the Queen's Beasts, and each one represented one of the lines of Queen Elizabeth's heraldry, and they were sold during the time of her coronation. And it was a very important thing because a lot of people were questioning whether she legitimately should come to the throne because of how her father had come to the throne, and her connection to the direct line of royalty was through Henry III, and those Queen's Beasts represented him. So it was a big deal at the time, and my friend was convinced that it wasn't worth much because it was only from 1953, so it's not an antique. And I said, I think it's pretty good. It ended up being worth about $4,000 for the set.
That's a nice piece of change.
Yeah, and you can still see it on Antiques Roadshow.
Well, that's pretty exciting. And what did they see? What quality did they see in you that said, oh, you should be an appraiser?
Well, I went around because my friend went to the green room to be made up, and they said, well, you can go backstage and see the things that are going to be on the show. And I went around and started looking and saying, oh, this looks like this, and this looks like this. And, you know, that one over there looks like a fake. And the appraiser nudged me and said, don't tell them. But yes, it's a fake. We're going to have to tell them it is. And he said, you ought to become an appraiser. And it was just like that. And the next thing I knew, I'm meeting the Kino brothers, the furniture guys, and the guy who does the toy with the long ponytail, and all sorts of interesting people. And a lot of them ended up being our instructors in appraisal school. So it was a lot of fun.
It sounds like you had a natural inclination. It seems like you have a natural inclination towards history as well. You not only know what something's worth, you seem to know the whole history of the item.
Well, that's why I started doing the YouTube channel. I figured that all these years, people have taught me all these things. I didn't know any of this when I got in the antique business in my early 20s, and I learned everything at the by talking to dealers and having them explain to me what they had, and going around and seeing collections. And it was just so fascinating. And I do love history. And so I kind of put things together in a timeline in my head. And that really helps when you're evaluating something, because we oftentimes are called in to look at things that maybe we've never seen before either. And we have to be able to do some sleuthing. So it really helps.
Now, when should somebody call in an appraiser?
It really depends on their situation. If you are downsizing...
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was thinking not for the insurance purposes or other purposes, but if they're moving or somebody has passed away, when should they say, oh, well, I might call an appraiser rather than just throw it up online or throw it in a yard sale? How do you know when to do that? I think if you have something that has been in the family a long time and you've heard stories about it and mom said, oh, this is really great, but you don't really know why, that might be a time to talk to an appraiser before you make a decision about what to do with it. People call appraisers when they're downsizing because if they're moving any distance, they may need an insurance binder for the move. So that's one time that we get called. If someone passes and the estate is in probate, or if the estate is large enough that there's going to be an estate tax situation, either on a state or a federal level, then they have to have an appraiser come in and sign off on the value of the things in the estate. It's actually required now if you're making a charitable contribution. Say you've decided, I am moving to a retirement home and I'm going to donate my big collection. If it's worth more than $500, you have to have an appraiser evaluate it and fill out a form to be able to take your deduction on your taxes. So there's several situations with estates where it does make sense to call in an appraiser. For those of us without accreditation from a school of appraising, what can we do to tell the difference between something that might have value and something that's just from home goods?
Well, the first thing I tell people, and it sounds so basic, but turn it over and look at the bottom, because a lot of times I've had people bring things to appraisal fairs and say, well, this was sitting in the house and we think maybe it's valuable. And we turn it over and it says made in China with a paper sticker right on the bottom of it, but they never turned it over to look. Or you turn something over and it has no evidence of wear. It has never been scraped, moved, touched. That's a pretty good indication that something maybe isn't as old as you think it is. On the other hand, if you do have, you think, a Ming vase, well, then you get into a whole world of things, because Ming vases were copied in the Qing period. So there are real antiques that have fake Ming marks that were done in the 17 and 1800s. So that's when you start to get into an area where you really need somebody with some expertise to look at these things and help you really understand what it is that you have.
Since the focus of your show is letting go of stuff and not acquiring more and more, when does the time come when somebody has to change their ways and stop collecting? Or should you just collect to your heart's content, chop till you drop, so to speak?
I think it honestly depends on your personal situation and how you are set up for your retirement and what you want to do during your final period of time. You know, retirement is this moment where you get to decide, what am I going to do and what am I going to be for the rest of my life? And so if your dream is to travel and you want to live lightly, that would be a great time to do your downsizing. On the other hand, if you just love collecting and you have a big, huge house and you have plenty of money and you're going to be taken care of in that place for the rest of your life and you don't want to get rid of stuff, well, then maybe you don't need to get rid of a lot of stuff. But there's a lot of folks who get stuck where they really want to have a different kind of life in retirement and they let their objects hold them back. It becomes the albatross around their neck. And that is definitely the time that you need help from someone like you who helps with organizing and decluttering. I really liked what you had to say about clutter is not just the stuff, it's the impediments that clutter puts in the way of you getting on with your life. And I'll have people call, for example, I had a woman call and she said, oh, my kids really want me to get rid of all of this stuff. And I went to her house, and it was a normal house with a normal amount of stuff. And I said, well, what's your situation? And she said, well, I really want to go live with my eldest daughter, but, I just don't know what to do with all of these things. And I said, how long have you been contemplating this? And she said, 3 years. So meanwhile, her life is on hold for all of this time because she's just not sure what to do with these things. And that definitely is the point where it is time to cut and let go.
Yeah, it can really, having all of that stuff you can not know where to go in your retirement. A lot of people do move. I think statistics will tell us that that's increasingly so, but you can't even see clear to make what choice if you think, oh my God, I have to deal with all of that stuff.
Yes.
I'd rather stay put than, have to go through it. But do you think when you buy something in the first place that you should keep a file that says, this is how much I paid, this is where I got it, this is, it's an antique? Should you keep a record of purchases that you make along the way so that or you or somebody knows or remembers how much it was worth when you go to sell it?
I think that that's a really useful place to start. And it really does help when I go into an appraisal situation, especially if they've collected something for a long time. They may know more about the individual pieces than I would because it was their passion and their collection. And so it really does help the appraiser to have clues. And it also helps the family to have clues so that they feel more confident. Now, at the same time, if you're doing that, please understand that markets change because things that were valuable 30 years ago, for example, sets of fine china with platinum and gold rims, are now very hard to sell because they don't match the current lifestyle. So having those values and that information is a really great starting point, but don't get hung up on the fact that, well, mom said this was really valuable and now they're telling me it isn't, so I don't know what to do and I'm going to just sit with it and hold it for the next 20 years while I figure it out. Because the truth is that markets go up and markets go down. Things we wouldn't have dreamt people wanted, like big pieces of orange glass, are selling for $300 and $400 now, made in 1975. And things that are rare, beautiful looking period furniture are selling for bargain basement prices right now. So, keep that information because it gives everybody a place to start, and you may know more about that. But also bear in mind that every note that mom wrote about Aunt Matilda said this was valuable doesn't mean that the piece is necessarily valuable.
So you're kind of a heartbreaker in a way.
I have to be the Grim Reaper a lot of times, yes.
Give the bet. What is trending? So if we have it in our homes, you should run out and get your best price for it.
Well, I had someone yesterday tell me that he had a very large collection of gas and oil, petroliana, big signs. He had a mobile gas sign that was 9 feet tall and that it was all sitting out in his barn and that he and his wife are spending their winters in Arizona and that they don't want to have to pay for security and he wants to get rid of this stuff. And I said, sell it now. It is at peak prices. It's never been so expensive. Get rid of it now because we may never see these prices again because we have a generation of wealthy people in their 70s now who are buying their old car their Pontiac GTO from 1965, and they're spending $100,000 at Barrett Jackson to get a car that was a $10,000 car 20 years ago, and they're paying through the nose for all of the petroliana to put behind it in their garage. When that generation is gone, is the next generation going to have that level of appreciation for those things? My guess is maybe not. And we've certainly seen that before. So that's really hot right now. Art glass is really hot right now. And it doesn't matter if it's hand-painted Fenton or if it's a designer studio glass like a Pilchuck piece, Dale Chihuly. All of that is very popular again right now in a way that it really hasn't been for about 10 or 15 years. It's really taken on strong. The new generation loves that sort of thing. They seem to really like color, and that is the item. And on the other hand, there's some categories that are really out of fashion too. And I would recommend people on my channel, the Antique Nomad on YouTube, the video that I have that has by far done the best, I think I have 300,000 views so far, is called What's Hot and What's Not in Collecting. Yeah. And about a year ago, I did a presentation in front of people moving into an assisted living place in Florida. And they were all people saying, I've got a house full of stuff. I've got a storage unit full of stuff. What am I going to do with it? And I went down the whole list of these things are popular. These things are less so. So that can be a really great place for people to get some general information about all that. And it's free.
Wow, wonderful. That's a good tip. So go to YouTube, watch the Antique Nomad, and find out what's hot and what's not. Now, how much if I want to have you come in and help me decide what's valuable, what's not, and all my stuff, how much is that going to cost?
Well, I charge the same rate. I charge the same hourly rate no matter what I'm doing. I charge $125 an hour, and I'm told I'm on the low end, but I think somewhere in the $150 range for a certified appraiser is about what you're looking at. Now, there are other ways that you can get information, but one thing I would caution people is a lot of people call someone in who's, and it's fine to be an antique dealer and be an appraiser. It's just not fine to wear both those hats at the same time. People will call someone in and say, oh, I need to know what this is worth. And the next thing they're getting is, well, I'll give you this for it. Well, that's not what you're looking for. You want somebody who will tell you, this is this, it should sell in this price range. Here are your options for how you can sell that item. That's the service that you're paying for. So if you're paying somebody, make sure that's what you're getting, not somebody coming in and then charging you for the privilege to make offers on your merchandise.
Oh, that's a good point, because they're going to go, oh, well, that's not worth anything, and it's really worth something. And then, you pay that you get a low price, and they sell it for a high price. It's not no integrity in that.
That can happen, and you really want to deal with someone who has some references. I always bring my professional profile so they can see what my background is and that I am certified. A certified appraiser who is following what they call USPAP, Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, will not make an undisclosed offer to buy. They will either come in as a buyer or they will come in as an appraiser, and they will not try to do both. So make sure you're asking for that. Because, the other thing too is that people sometimes give up a little bit easily. There are some pretty easy references for what things are selling for. A lot of things you can go right to eBay, click the box that says completed sales, and get a whole lot of information, at least a picture of what the market is now, so that you don't necessarily have to have the appraiser look at every item, because it can be costly. So focus on the things you really are stuck on and don't know for sure after you've gotten some information from some other sources.
If I want to move, or somebody has passed away and I know I have to go in there and I have to clean out this place, do I straighten it up and get everything in order without getting rid of anything yet, and then call in the appraiser, or just leave it as is and let the appraiser come in and he'll be able to tell me, or she'll be able to tell me what's to keep, what to let go of?
Oh, that's a very good question. And the way I would approach it is, if you have a lot of things that are of like nature, like say there's a huge collection of cup and saucer sets, instead of having them spread all over the house, if you can assemble those in one place, then the appraiser can look through and say, 90% of these are worth $10 a set. I'm just going to pick out the ones that are worth more and tell you about those. And that will save you time and money. So if you can do that level of organization, that's great. If there's things stuck way back in a china cabinet that you can't even see, taking enough things out so that you can get to them, or a jewelry box full of jewelry, if you really want to get the best service, spread those things out and make it a little bit easier. You don't have to organize everything down to the house is perfectly clean, because that's another thing that's more clutter in your head, where you can get stuck and never get the job done. But if you can make it easier on them, they're going to be able to do a better job, make sure they catch everything in your house that has value, and do it in a faster order.
If somebody's choosing to work with an estate sale company, would the estate sale company call in the appraiser, or should you call in the appraiser and then hire an estate sale company? In what order should that come?
I do estate sales as well, and I tell them, if you hire me, you're getting the appraisal as part of the estate sale. So unless you need the appraisal for other purposes besides holding an estate sale, I would hire somebody with an estate sale company that understands, ask some questions. Do you deal with antique and vintage items? Have you seen things like this before? How do you deal with figuring this out for pricing? And if they say, well, we take care of it all, and we have a person that we call in and we can deal with all of this, well, then you don't have to worry at all. But if they seem sort of like they don't know, then either you're going to have to do it and give them the information and lead them there. You might need to work with somebody else, honestly.
Okay, got it. Okay, folks, we're going to wrap up this conversation here and thank our guest, George Higby, for slowing down from his travels back and forth across the country just long enough to make us smarter about what an appraiser is and when to use one. There's more to learn, no doubt, so drop into George's YouTube channel called The Antique Nomad when you get a moment. In the meantime, please pay a visit to our website at www.decluttering55plus.com and click on the Let's Connect button to share your comments and questions, as well as tell us what your experiences are with letting go of clutter in your life. Tell your family and friends to pay a visit to this podcast, and let's grow this community. Thanks for stopping in, and be sure to have a clutter-free day. Thanks. Well, that's all we have time for today, so let's wrap things up with a request that you go to our website, www.decluttering55plus.com, and click on the Let's Connect button. Share your thoughts, insights, and tell us the lessons you've learned. If you're facing challenges or celebrating triumphs on your decluttering journey, we want to hear from you. Connect with us on social media. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Let us know you're part of our community by rating and reviewing us from wherever you're listening from today. And don't forget, invite your friends and family, young and old, to tune in too. Let's include them in the conversation. The more, the merrier. Thanks for being with us today. And until next time, this is Decluttering 55 Plus with Michelle Passoff, wishing you a clutter-free day.